Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Obsessed with Wine. My name is Wesley Cable, your host, and it's Friday night, so we've got another amazing interview for you. Now, tonight's interview is going to be a little bit unique compared to what I've had on in the past. I've had a lot of wine professionals who work at wineries and production, hospitality, etc. And tonight, I've got somebody who owns a wine. It's called Wine Talent. It's a company that hires for the wine industry. So if you've ever wanted a job in the wine industry or you've ever thought about getting a job in the wine industry, I think this will be an interesting interview for you to listen to. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Amy Gardner on. She is the president of Wine Talent, and we're going to talk to her about this. So hold on, let me get her in here. There she is, Amy.
Hi.
Good evening. How are
Oh,
you?
yes, very good. I'm very thrilled to be here. I have to warn everyone I'm a little jet lagged because I was just in 2 days ago from Europe. I think I'm doing pretty good.
Well, I was saying in the opening there, just for a second, I was saying that we've had a lot of wine professionals on the show, but I've never had anyone who kind of has the inside knowledge of recruiting and hiring for the wine business. So I have so many things that I want to ask you about. So I'm really excited. But I want to ask you first, since you mentioned it, about your vacation.
Yeah,
You were just telling me a minute ago how great this vacation was. So, and it has to do with wine. So tell
right,
us about the
exactly.
vacation. What did you do?
Yeah, so I think when you're in the wine industry, you have the great option to often travel to beautiful locations. And I do travel for work a lot, and it was work, but it is nice to get away. I started out in Champagne, the Champagne region. So I got to visit one of my clients, Roeder Estate, out there, and then a few other places, and saw some historic wineries and love. I My Champagne is my favorite, so very happy to be there. And it was my first time getting out to Champagne, so that was nice. After that, we were in the Alsace region, which is cool. I would say low alcohol, bright aromatic whites, and those are probably my
Hmm.
favorite ones. So that was a
Hmm.
great place and very picturesque area.
Yeah.
So that was very nice. And then from there, we went along the German wine route. So we went along the Rhine, and we went to different locations along there. Beautiful. It's so nice to see how agriculture is done in different places.
Yeah.
And in some of those locations, you have very steep hillsides that have been farmed for grapes for centuries. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
So when you go on a trip like that, right, and you buy a bunch of wine, how do you get it home? Do you take it home with you, or do they ship it home? How does that work?
I don't bring any wine home.
Oh,
I try to travel light,
okay.
and so mostly visiting there, tasting there, and then buying it through a distributor or buying it at a retailer here. That just tends to be, for me, it's the easier way around it. So
Okay. Now, do you find that people who travel to those places, do some people bring wine home or not? I mean, I was just assuming everybody did, but maybe not.
I don't know. I think there are some companies that specialize in being able to allow you to buy wine there and then they ship it home for you. I think a lot of people do that.
Okay.
Some people buy special suitcases. There's Fly with Wine, I think, is a company that puts that out there.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people do. I hate it if something were to go wrong with the wine.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
total sense. Yeah.
yeah.
So you're the president of Wine Talent, and so you started the company in 2004.
Uh-huh.
So tell us about Wine Talent, what you do, and how you got started and why the wine industry. I mean, you could hire people like you said earlier for all kinds of different areas, but why wine?
It's really the people. Had my background. I went to Davis. I have my degree in plant science or botany, and then I got into fermentation science and microbiology. And I was working in the lab, and I realized that doing the same thing all day, every day was quite boring, and there wasn't a lot of personal interaction. So I got into recruiting. So I was recruiting scientists for different jobs, and the wine industry, you have harvest, which for a short period of time, you need a lot of people and you
Mhm.
need some technical people. So I was placing the lab people for
Mhm.
different positions. And that just kind of grew into placing assistant winemakers, vineyard managers. And it's really a tight knit community. So you get to know people pretty quickly. And I think the wine industry is based on a lot of it's based on your reputation. So small industry, if you do the right thing, you do a good job, you can survive and flourish. So that's been good for me.
Yeah. So one of the things that you just mentioned is just the hiring process and all of that stuff for the wine business. So, what are some of the? And I was thinking about myself because I told you earlier. I wanted to work in the wine business, but I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to go. I didn't even know if I was even qualified or anything like that. So I didn't really know what to do. So, for those people who are out there and they're thinking, "Man, my dream is to work in the wine business," like, what's the best place to start? Where do they start?
Well, I think getting some wine education is important. There's a lot of aspects to the wine industry, so you can be anywhere from hospitality, greeting guests and entertaining guests and making them have a great experience, to production, where you're involved with crushing the grapes through to making the wine in the bottle and having it for people to consume. You have financial aspects. So every
Mhm.
winery has money in, money out. So you need financial people, administrators. You also need salespeople. A lot of people say it's very easy to make wine, but it's harder to sell it. So
I've heard that,
getting
yeah.
people, yeah, getting
Mhm.
people that can sell your wine is very important. So there's many different aspects. And a lot of times people come from outside the industry and are wondering how to get in.
Mhm.
And I think you want to play to your strengths. So if you have a finance background, you could be doing finance just within a wine industry. But I think you should get some background on what the wine industry is, and what are some of the quirks that are with the wine industry. And a lot of that has to do with the three-tier distribution system and former prohibition laws. So there are some odd things to alcoholic beverage industry.
So, what are some of the benefits or the advantages for working in the wine industry? Obviously, you work in the wine industry and you hire people in all different positions. So, what are some things maybe that we're not thinking of that are benefits or advantages to working in the wine business?
Um, so you have some positions that are very specific to a geography. So if you're working for a winery and you're a winemaker, you're going to be working at the winery. If you're a vineyard manager, you're going to be managing the vineyards that are for the winery. So some things keep you very much rooted to a place.
Mhm.
Then there's positions that are more sales and hospitality. So sales, you could be working for a Napa winery based out of Connecticut. And so there's different aspects and different ways to work within the wine industry. I think that there's a lot of opportunities to take uh, experience from outside. And a lot of
Mhm.
times that could be construction companies, or it could be consumer packaged good companies, and what you were doing there. If you were doing marketing and consumer packaged goods, that's very relevant to the wine industry because we're selling a packaged good and we
Yeah.
need people to market it and then to be able to sell it. So there are a lot of similarities, but sometimes people get caught up in, and especially my clients get caught up in the idea that you have to have wine industry experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I found that was fascinating when I was working at wineries is I just made the assumption that everybody who worked at the winery loved wine and drank wine. But I found out quickly that really wasn't the case. Like a lot of people that I met didn't even drink wine, and some people, weren't even really into it. But I was fascinated by that. Is that what you have found? It's not that way.
True. And especially in different locations. So, um, yeah, you're in the Sierra foothills.
Hmm.
So some people that live in the Sierra foothills may have no interest in wine, but right next door is a big winery. So that's how they land in there. A lot of
Yeah.
times it's also through friends and family. So if you have a friend who's working in a cellar, they say, hey, we need someone, and you end up there. You may have never drank a glass of wine in your life. And sometimes you shouldn't have because you're not old enough to drink. I
Right.
mean, you can't work in a
Yeah.
cellar and not be 21. So there, yeah, plenty of people that have no interest in the wine industry who are in it because it's an industry.
Yeah.
Just, yeah,
Well, and a lot of people say that, especially the interns, they say, listen, this is an opportunity for me to travel and make money and be able to just kind of travel around from place to place. Wine or not, they're just happy to do that, which I was fascinated by when I heard that.
right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So is there a decent amount of turnover in the wine business, like there is in a lot of other careers, or do people tend to stay there for a long time? What is your thought on that?
Um, I think there's a good amount of turnover.
Yeah,
I think some companies have too much turnover, which is always unhealthy.
yeah,
But I think that what I've seen is some positions, the only way you can get an increase in your salary is to move. So a lot of times that happens with tasting rooms.
hmm,
So someone comes in to be a tasting room host. They are there. They've bumped up to the top of what they can get paid there. The only way they can get an increase in their compensation is to take another job. So a
yeah,
lot of times you do see some hospitality positions every couple of years, someone moves on.
hmm,
I think that as a job, as an employee, you want to have a few jobs that are 3 years in length, or maybe more is good. But definitely, you want to always be kind of moving up within an organization. We all want that. I mean, you
yeah,
can't always do that, but
sure,
I would say. The turnover sometimes that's why the turnover is that way.
yeah,
um, but you also sometimes have turnover. Harvest positions, yeah, you expect someone to come in for 3, 4 months and they're going to
yeah,
be gone.
hmm.
That makes sense. I think there's a healthy amount of turnovers. Some turnover is good.
So I have a question about what you just mentioned. So this is the same way it is in a lot of businesses, including one of the other businesses that I'm in. Is why is it that the employer doesn't do more, I guess, to keep some of their best people instead of having them go somewhere else to get higher pay or whatnot? What's the thought behind the employer for those particular scenarios? Do you know what I'm asking about that?
I think I understand what you're asking. So I think every wineries has different ownership, and
Hmm.
you can have small mom and pop wineries, and you can have large multinational winery companies. Some winery companies understand the value of their human capital, the
Yeah,
people there. A tiny winery could be holding onto their people dearly and be the best employer possible.
yeah,
Some of the big guys turn people over every 2 years. So
yeah,
I think it's just, for me, it's a bit of a mindset. I mean, I think people are the most important asset a company has.
yeah,
And so I think it's just a philosophy of the company.
yeah. So is there a shortage of labor in the wine industry? And maybe it's not all aspects of the wine industry, but is there certain areas where it's hard to find people?
You're going to get me drinking now. Yeah, it's
Uh-oh.
been a tough,
Oh
tough
no.
a couple months. No, just
Yeah.
kidding. So it's a really weird job market right now, I think.
Mhm.
In the last 2 years with the pandemic, wineries shut down, hospitality rooms shut down,
Yeah.
restaurants shut down. Then people were ready to get back out there, start socializing again. So they hired people, and they were really aggressive because they couldn't get enough people. So there were
Yeah.
$1,000 hiring bonuses to be a tasting room host at Prisoner Wine Company,
Yeah.
to be someone who did the dishes at some of the wineries were getting huge signing on bonuses
Yeah.
and big, big hourly rates. Um,
Mhm.
so that happened, and I think we're kind of dealing with like this hangover right now. So people are a little bit less likely to apply for a new job
Mm.
because maybe they jumped around a little bit during the pandemic, post pandemic, and now they're saying, "Ugh, I left a really good company," or what I know is better than what I don't.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a little bit reticence there.
Hmm.
And also, I think there was a lot of salary inflation. So people were jumping for that signing on bonus.
Yeah.
They were jumping for $2 more an hour, or they were jumping for 10% more. Well,
Hmm.
companies are feeling they're just getting squeezed a little bit. The economy is a little wonky.
Yeah.
So companies don't have all that ability to just throw out more money at people. So people are kind of bunkering down a little bit, and companies that are hiring have to be pretty good about saying we have work life balance, we have great benefits, we have
Yeah.
a good salary. So
Yeah.
companies are kind of caught right now, but there's also uh, they have a little bit more power to be strong employers in terms of, hey, come to work, hey, there's no more hybrid work schedule or whatever it is. It's a
Yeah.
little There's a little bit of a right sizing going on right now in the economy and the labor pool. So, but there's not enough people looking right now. That's my problem.
Okay. I see. Well,
They're worried. They're
maybe there's somebody out there tonight who's saying, I want that
right.
job's for me. So,
Yeah. So go to
all right.
winetalent.net and look at my job postings.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Now, so just talking to that, is it a California problem, or is it, because I know you say you cover most of the US, I think. So,
Yeah.
is it a US problem?
I think it is. Um, right now, I do have more positions in California. So I'm seeing it more in California.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that kind of the economy overall, just it's a little unsteady. So
Yeah.
when that happens, people are less likely to jump ship.
I see.
So I
Okay.
think it's nationwide, but there are, I'm sure there's some places that are a little bit more steady Eddie, but they might not have a lot of wine business either. So
That's true.
yeah.
So, all right. So we're getting close to harvest, at least here in California. It's nearing, which is my favorite time of the year by far. I love harvest. So obviously, wineries are not hiring today for their harvest. I mean, usually they've got them already hired. But how does your job change as you get closer to harvest and filling those positions?
So I don't really fill harvest positions.
Oh,
So yeah, so
it doesn't
maybe
change.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky that way.
Yeah.
But it is a very seasonal business. So I used to hire people for harvest positions.
Hmm.
Now I'm upper management and executive level positions.
Hmm.
So the positions I'm recruiting on are the people that are managing the business, the people that are responsible for the sales, the marketing, just the overall administration of the business,
Okay.
including winemaking and vineyard management. Um, but so those positions tend to be a little bit more. If you're going to need a CFO, you're going to need a CFO. So
Yeah.
it's not harvest is coming now. I need a CFO.
Right.
Um, So it doesn't tend to be as cyclical, but the
Hmm.
wine industry itself is seasonal. So I do have times that are much busier, and I have times that are quiet. So luckily, the beginning of July or late June, early July tends to be quiet. That's when I went out for a big travel,
Yeah.
and then it's very funny because you get all ready for harvest, and then on my side things get very quiet during harvest. So
Yeah.
if you were working as a harvest person or working as a winemaker, it's really busy, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden, no one is hiring. All they're doing is making wine,
Right.
harvesting, making wine, making things clean. As you know, sanitation is very important for winemaking. So
Working
that's
a million
my world.
hours. Yeah.
Right, exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. Yes.
So I've been in a situation before in my business where a recruiter will call me. I'm not looking for a job, but they know that I do a certain thing and they're looking to fill positions that they have open for their clients. So is it the same in the wine business where you might have a position and you might reach out to somebody who already has a job and say, "Hey, I've got this position open. Is this something you're interested in? They're offering this, this, and this. Would you be interested in hearing about it?" Like, is that a thing in the wine business also?
That's what I do. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm an executive recruiter. Some people
Yes.
like to call us headhunters. So
Headhunter,
we
yeah.
are the people who are going out and calling you directly. Um, Not everyone likes a headhunter, especially if
Sure.
you pull the head of their company and put them somewhere else. But
Yeah.
that's what we do. So it is all about making contacts. It's about knowing who's where, knowing who might be unhappy. And I don't know with your business, but sometimes companies that are in the death spiral and you just know no one's happy there. They're not
Yes.
getting any money. You know that they're a prime target. So those are the people
Yes.
you call and say, you've been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So that and a lot of referrals. So calling that person, they say, no, I'm still happy, but I need you to call this person. So, yeah.
Okay. So let's just talk about winemaker for just a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's assume I'm a winemaker at XYZ winery and I'm really happy where I'm at. Like, you know, why would a winemaker want to go from from A to B? Is it like a prestige thing? Is it, the extra benefits that are available? Like, what is that conversation like with somebody?
Right. So I think people always need to look at the whole picture. So if I was calling the winemaker XYZ,
Hmm.
um, I might be working for a winery that has a fabulous consulting winemaker that's on the project. And sometimes people want to work with that and to get kind of those stellar scores and to get that buzz behind what they're making.
Yeah.
Um, I know a lot of winemakers who make great wines, but they have no interaction with the vineyards. So a lot of winemakers want to have that connection to the vineyard. So if you
Yeah.
have an estate vineyard, estate winery, that's going to be a big draw for a lot of people. And then sometimes it is the benefits. I mean, a small XYZ may not have health insurance. They may not have any bonus and they may not have a 401k. So a lot of times it's looking at um, people start their family. They say, you know what, I really need health insurance and I
Yeah.
would like to start saving for retirement. So sometimes those larger companies that have great benefit package are very attractive to someone who maybe is at a smaller place.
I see.
Yeah.
So, since you brought it up, I'm going to ask you, and maybe you don't deal with this, but the consulting winemaker thing is
Uh-huh.
how does that actually happen? And meaning, how does somebody select one and all that stuff? So, how does that whole thing work? Do you have any idea? I'm just curious because you mentioned it.
So consulting winemakers, a lot of times, it might be the types of wines that you want to make. Like,
Hmm.
so say you're the owner of the
Yeah.
winery and you want to make awesome Pinot Noir.
Hmm.
Probably you'd want to look at a winemaker who has great experience making Pinot Noir.
Hmm.
So you would look at the consulting winemakers, probably the wines that you like from different consulting winemakers. So, or say you have a winery or a vineyard, you'd want to look at consulting winemakers who know some of the terroir, know some of the aspects of what's going to make great wines for that
Yeah.
area. So I think those are the things that lead people to different consulting winemakers.
So, do you get involved in that at all?
Not really.
Okay.
Sometimes I help consulting winemakers take on new projects, but mostly I'm there once they have the consulting winemaker and they need someone who's there for the day to day.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. All right, so we're in the world right now in the time of remote work. Okay, and you
Uh-huh.
mentioned it earlier. Winemakers aren't working remotely, cellar people aren't working remotely, and obviously the tasting room people aren't. But is there such thing as a remote job in the wine business?
Yes. So as there's remote jobs in all kinds of businesses, I mean, marketing would be a great one, but marketing, sometimes you need that buzz of being at the winery and seeing what's going on. Direct consumer, a little bit. So e-commerce is a
Uh-huh.
big part of that. Any of your kind of admin jobs, um, if you're managing all of the business for a winery or you're in charge of all of the sales management.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to be there. Sometimes those things can be completely remote. I would say for the wine industry, most often a sales rep is based out of their home office or a remote office, and they're out there to sell the wines in a region. So they are not, never have been really people that come into the office. So you've
Yeah.
always had wineries that have had salespeople spread out across the country. So there's a lot of options for remote work, but it was interesting during the pandemic because wineries are essential business. And so day one, people had to be there to make the wine, to bottle the wine, to ship the wine. So it was an interesting time. So I was getting people placed in vineyard management positions during the pandemic, and they had to
Yeah.
drive next to the other guy they were going to be interviewing with their windows down to do the interview while they're touring the vineyard. So it
Wow.
was very interesting. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. So if you're a winery and you have some positions available, and I just want to get an idea of how it works with you. So let's say I own a winery and I've got a winemaker position open. So can you just kind of walk us through the process, kind of start to finish? Like, how does it? Do we reach out to you and say, "Hey, we've got this job available"? It's like, just kind of walk us through that process because I'm curious to see how it goes
Right.
working with somebody like you.
Right. So I am always working with a winery client. So I do work with a lot of wineries. I do sometimes work with importers, or I might work with companies that provide services or products to the wine industry.
Yeah.
So packaging sales, uh, large equipment that the wine industry needs, barrels, those types of companies. But a lot of my jobs are really core within working within a winery.
Mhm.
But so a client normally calls me. I tend to work with companies I've worked with in the past.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of um, long relationships. I think
Yeah.
that's why I enjoy the wine industry. Or it might be they know someone that I worked with. So that's how they hear about me. Um, and so they call me and they say, this is the job. So I say, well, I could work on it, or maybe I don't have anybody that's going to be like that. And
Yeah.
so I want to be as upfront about that as possible.
Mhm.
So I find out what they're looking for. We talk through it. And then I need to gauge how serious they are about the job, how serious they are about hiring. And also, I like to know a culture of a company and also somewhat of their reputation. So um, there are great employers out there, and sometimes there's some employers that are very difficult,
Mhm.
and they are difficult when I'm working with them, and they're difficult when someone's going to be the employee. So I want to work with companies that are really focused on hiring quality employees,
Yeah.
um, and that understand how important a great team is in the company. So
Mhm.
that's what I have to gauge that. So we say, "Ooh, okay, everything lines up, and we're going to be working together." I'm a retained search, so I have an upfront fee that they have to pay, and
Mhm.
that kind of says we're engaged. We're now working together, and I then work through my candidate pool. I'm doing a lot of referrals. I'm cold calling those people I know that are in the right job for that position.
Mhm.
I do all of the interviews. I do a phone screen, then I do a Zoom or a video interview, or face to face if I can. And
Yeah.
then I'm submitting those candidates to my clients. I'm always, I think my job is to screen the candidates and find the right person for that job, not send a bunch of paper to a wine owner to say, hey, look, there's 10 people that could possibly be right. So I think my
Yeah.
job is to screen through.
Mhm.
And so then I help do set up the interviews, I help with offer negotiations, and then I help that person start their first day, and I stay in touch with them. So, clients always worry that I'm in touch with the people after I place them, but it's a long term relationship. And
Yeah.
I've had people, I think I have people that have been someone I've placed in the same company for 25 years now. So,
Wow.
it's nice to know that person in King City. It's nice to know the person over in Dundee, Oregon. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So then my client pays a fee. So my client, the winery or the company, is who pays the fee. I never charge a fee to a job seeker,
Mhm.
and I just think that that's fair because I can't promise anyone that I will give them the job, but I will promise a company that I can find them the right employee.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been in that experience before in my business with the recruiter or the headhunter, if you want to say, and it is definitely a valuable relationship for the employee as well who's looking for work, because they have kind of that intermediary between the company and they can say to you maybe what they wouldn't say to the company, and it really helps kind of figure out what the company's really looking for and all that. So I think it's super valuable. So
Right. And
how about
a lot of times no one's had that advocate for them.
yeah.
So getting through the interview process and getting a job offer and then negotiating your job offer, that's like some of the most treacherous times for people. And
Yeah,
so to have someone, hey, this is what we can do, or hey, this is you want to ask for 3 weeks vacation, I think that's fine, I think we could get that. So that is something that we offer that
that's
is
awesome.
helpful for employees. Yeah.
So besides working on the employer side, but for the candidates, right? I mean, do
Yeah.
candidates reach out to you and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this or that. Do you have anything?" What kind of things do you do for people that are looking for jobs?
Right. So I'm always wanting to talk to new people that are looking for a job. So that's how I build my database, my talent pool. And
Mhm,
so looking at people with different backgrounds, I ask people to send their resume or they apply through a job posting that I have.
mhm,
And if it's someone who, say, I know in the future I'm going to have a job similar to what they're doing and they could be great, a lot of times I want to set up that initial phone screen right when I'm seeing their resume. I take notes, keep it in my database. So then when I come back and I have a job that's for a controller and it pays $100,000 and the person I just talked to 3 months ago is similar, I know, hey, this would be a good person to call. So
I
those are
see.
the types of things that I do with candidates. I also help with resumes. I give advice. I was talking to someone who has great champagne industry experience today,
Hmm,
and he was hesitant about contacting other champagne companies. I was like, you have to. And I think, those are some of the things that I um, know that companies need certain skills, but sometimes the employee themselves isn't quite ready to do something that could be very helpful for their career.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question about resumes. Now,
Yes.
not exclusive to the wine business, because I'm sure everybody, who's watching or listening, has a job and they have a resume. So are resumes still important, and do people really have to make sure that they, do their best to put together like the best resume? Like, how important is a good resume?
I think it's very important, but
Okay.
I'm gonna give you some caveats why, maybe not. But
Yeah.
so, okay, if you can't put your stuff on a piece of paper or a document that tells me what you have experience doing, really? I mean,
Okay.
it's not that hard. I
Yeah.
mean, there's tools, and I have my blog, I have articles about how you can get help with your LinkedIn profile and your resume, how to make your own resume. But I do think you should have a resume. I think it should be pleasing to the eye. Okay.
Okay.
But that's because I look at resumes all day. I mean,
Yeah. Right. Well,
so,
that's why I'm
um,
asking you, because
right.
you're the one who sees them all. So
Right. So I do think you should have a good resume. I do think you should tailor your resume somewhat to each position. But
okay.
if you're looking, say you're looking at a assistant winemaker job, your resume would be very similar for most jobs you would apply for. You don't have to change it all the time. But
Yeah.
I think also don't have spelling errors, especially like in your name, and make sure you have your phone number and your email on there. So those are things that are shockingly sometimes forgotten. But
People don't forget that, do they?
yes, they do.
They do. Uh,
Not they don't normally misspell their name. I've had it happen, but sometimes
wow.
people like a template. Sometimes you forget that you need your phone number in there. They just think,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm sending it as through email or something." So yes, have a good resume. But sometimes I'll headhunt. I'll call that person that hasn't been looking for a job for 5 years, and they haven't made their resume. I'll help them with their resume, or we'll kind of build it together. So
That's nice. So one more thing on resumes: picture on the resume or no picture? What are your thoughts on that?
well, I like a picture, but
Okay.
what and Europeans tend to put pictures. I would say people from other countries tend to put their picture on there.
Okay.
So your picture should be good. I mean, you should be looking friendly on the picture and professional.
Okay.
Um, but people do say that if you have a picture on there, you could be discriminated against.
Oh,
So if they don't want to hire a woman and it's a picture of a woman, you could say that's discriminatory.
I
But
see.
that's your call. I think a nice picture is good on there, but it's not necessary. And I would say probably only 20% of the resumes I see have a picture.
Okay. That's good
Yeah.
to know for everybody. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, I want to talk about specific positions now, if you don't mind. So, the first thing
Yes.
I want to know, though, is before we get into this specific positions, is what are the most difficult positions to fill for wineries?
So ones I won't take on. I
Oh,
can never find a maintenance mechanic. I
oh,
have worked on a few and I found them, but they're the hardest ones to fill. They're most important. I mean, you need
yeah,
to make sure your pump is working, your
yep,
press is working. You need to make sure that your cooling tanks are going to get cool.
yeah,
So those positions are the hardest. Most companies would love it if I could find the maintenance mechanics day and night, but maintenance mechanics, great maintenance mechanics tend to go to a company and stay.
yeah,
And maintenance mechanics aren't big on social media. So they're not making their LinkedIn profile. They may not even have a resume.
right,
And they're probably not looking for a job. So
right.
they're the most difficult to place. Uh,
They're hard to find. Yeah,
yes,
that
yes,
makes sense.
yeah,
So, in
yeah.
your job, and before we talk about these specific positions, but in your job as a recruiter, how important is presence on social media? And I'm not talking about your candidates, but I'm just talking about you being out there and all that. Is that an important aspect of your job?
I think it is. Right now, I've been a little bit lax on my social media.
Okay,
Uh, Social media has its pros and its cons, but
sure.
I think for me, I try to keep a presence on LinkedIn, and I think
Hmm.
that is for me the most important. I
Yeah.
probably spend at least half my day on LinkedIn,
Oh,
compared to most people who don't.
right.
And I do have a special account where I can find anyone who's on LinkedIn. It's a recruiter account, so I pay more for that. But
Hmm.
so LinkedIn is very important. I try to keep something on Facebook. I do a little Instagram. Um, for me, it's important because people need to go, I'm looking for a job. I got to call Amy. Um, or a company says, geez, I really need to find a new head of sales. And Amy just seems to always be talking to these people that are doing that kind of job. So
Yeah.
for me, I think of social media as my opportunity to be at the local corner coffee shop. So
Hmm.
people happen to see me.
Yeah.
You and I don't live in Napa or Sonoma. So for us, it's a good way to just keep in front of people that we should see at the coffee shop.
Yeah. No, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I might ask you about my LinkedIn profile one of these days. So I
Yeah.
probably need some help on that. Um, all
It's
right.
not
So
bad. I checked it out. So,
okay. So let's talk about specific positions. Okay. So I just want to start with winemaker because to me, and like I said, I'm just an enthusiast. I don't own a winery, but like it seems like a pretty glamorous position being a winemaker. So from what your experience is, what are some of the best qualities that wineries are looking for when it comes to hiring a new winemaker?
so I think someone who knows how to make quality wines. And quality wines are not just the high priced wines coming from an estate vineyard.
Hmm.
Quality wines, you can make a lot of great wine that is $7 a bottle.
Hmm.
Or, hey, there's a lot of great wine in boxes. So
Hmm.
it's just someone who really can. I'll say that all great wine starts in the vineyard, but
Hmm.
someone who can take a bulk wine and blend it and finish it and make it into a crowd pleaser. I mean, that's quality winemaking.
Yeah.
Or it is the person who can take um, a fairly unknown varietal, make a natural wine from it, not using any additives or anything like that, and
Hmm.
that can create a delicious wine, that's also quality winemaking. So
Yeah.
I think those, I think that's one aspect. Some winemakers really have to be good at understanding their finances. A
Hmm.
lot of winemaking comes down to how much your barrels cost, how much your grapes are costing, how much your labor is. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a lot of that. It just
Hmm.
pretty much depends on the position and the company. But those are the types of things I'm looking for.
So, do scores play a part in the whole recruiting process of winemakers at all? Previous scores, maybe that they've received on certain wines, is that does that impact anything?
Yes, not always. Um, I'm as I said, that $7 bottle of wine probably isn't getting high scores. It
Right.
may be getting great, like critical reviews, which is great, and that's going to be important. But a lot of wineries, especially smaller estate wineries, they're looking for someone who comes from a background of getting scores. Scores sell wine.
Yeah.
Scores bring people to the winery to taste and
Hmm.
do an experience. So there are some of my winery clients who want to have only people that are 97 points and above. So it just really depends on what the goal of the company, the winery, the owner is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting. All right. So, the $1 million question I think everybody wants to know is, what does a winemaker get paid? I'm not asking for specifics, but I mean, just kind of a general range. Like, what can somebody has aspirations, maybe they're at Davis and they're thinking, man, I want to be a winemaker. What can they expect to get paid?
Right. So, Wesley, we had a chance to catch up a little bit before. So, I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you what everyone needs to know,
Okay.
at least in California, New York, and a few other states. But
Yes.
as of the beginning of this year, all California winery positions have to show what their salary range is. So, now if you want to know what a winemaker's making, you see the job posting for a California winery, you can see
Hmm.
what that salary range is.
Okay.
Um, Salary ranges can be quite broad. And that's because sometimes a more inexperienced person with a great degree or someone who has 10 more years of experience could be the right person for the job. And so they want to keep it open. But I think companies are doing a good job of making them realistic. So that would be one thing. Okay, now we
Yeah.
have salary ranges that are
Hmm.
published. You
Okay.
also have, for most jobs in the wine industry, you have the wine salary survey. So every year, Wine Business Monthly puts out their salary survey.
Hmm.
And that gives you a good idea of kind of averages. Um, they do also break it down for regions. So I think that's an important thing to look at. What a winemaker in New York City or New York State would make might be much different than someone in Napa. But those are good resources for people to have, and that we didn't always have those, so that's important. And I also encourage people that are looking at salaries to go onto salary.com and make sure they look at what the price of living is where they are, what
Hmm.
it is equivalent to where they're looking at a job. So that doesn't give you your number,
No, it
but
doesn't, and that's what I was looking for. I'm looking for that
well,
number.
you email me. I'll tell you what that number is. I'm
Okay.
looking for most winemakers, probably 90 to, let's say, 150 would probably be
Okay.
like a lot of winemakers. But you
Okay.
have some winemakers that are 200 and 300,000. Head winemaker, a large place, is going to be in that 2 to 400. But there's a lot that goes into that. So
No, definitely. Well, I appreciate that because
yeah,
I really had no idea. So, all
yeah.
right. So let's talk about hospitality. So, hospitality, I know that covers kind of a whole range of different people. But as far as hospitality professionals, when you get clients who reach out to you and they need somebody for their tasting room or they need somebody to manage the tasting room, etc., what are the skills and what are they looking for in people to fill those jobs?
Right. So on the hospitality side and definitely that direct consumer side, you have to be up on what is going on in the industry, just in terms of what other wineries are doing, what are some of the standards. But a good hospitality manager or a good person who's in charge of all the DTC is going to be very good at managing people.
Hmm.
Um, they're going to have a good understanding of what makes a guest feel welcome, to enjoy the wines, and how to get them to encourage others to come, bring their friends and sign up for the wine club
Hmm.
and come to events. But I really think that strong ability to manage people is important in that hospitality position. And with these positions, I definitely think understanding wine, having some wine education, your WSET or your quartermaster Psalms experience,
Hmm.
whatever level it is, some of that is definitely very good to have. So I think that understanding wine, understanding how to be very welcoming to guests, and that's not necessarily always you, but it's how to make sure your staff is always creating that hospitality experience.
So I know a lot of people have asked me before, and so I'm kind of curious about it. Do people in tasting rooms, whether it be the wine educators or people who are involved there, do they get commissions on the wines, or does it depend on the winery? Like, how does that usually go?
Right. So it definitely always depends on the winery. And as I
Okay.
said before, you got mom and pop shops, you got big corporate companies. But a lot of wineries tend to do a commission.
Hmm.
So it might be on cases sold, you get a percentage,
Hmm.
or a lot of it has to do with wine club signups.
Okay.
So if you're signing people up for the wine club, you get a bonus,
Hmm.
commission slash bonus.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's with events, not so much. But I think really it's sales of wine at the location, and then it's wine club signups.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. All right. So, all right. So let's move on then from the hospitality folks to the vineyard people, because, like you said earlier, and I've heard this 1,000 times, the wine is it's made in the vineyard. It's not made in the winery. So obviously, these vineyard positions are ultra important to these wineries. So, what goes into hiring somebody for these positions? What do they look for? And I mean, are those difficult positions to hire for only because, it's really hard work and, they're out in the sun and all that stuff. So
Right.
what do you say?
So, like I said about maintenance mechanic, sometimes vineyard managers and viticulturist positions are very difficult to find.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely on vineyard managers, you need to have good personnel experience. And often, if not always, you have to be bilingual, Spanish, English
Yeah.
speaking.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, you got to love being out in the hot sun. You got to love, digging up a ditch if you got to get that irrigation line redone.
Yeah.
It's doing whatever you need to do, but you're also sometimes managing large teams. You're managing tractor programs, you're managing that maintenance mechanic, you're managing a lot of kind of nuts and bolts. So those positions, also vineyard managers I find are not big on social media, so they're not always up to date with their LinkedIn profile.
Hmm.
But hey, I got other ways to reach them. So they I think, since I'm a botany plant science person, to me, I love those positions. I love working on those positions. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're difficult.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So besides the ones we've already talked about, and I know you mentioned the maintenance mechanics, but like, what are some of the real in-demand positions out there in the wine world that there's openings and people should be looking for them?
Well, I need vineyard managers. So
Okay.
that is a position that I've got two different jobs I really need people on. I have a viticulturist position that's very important as well.
Hmm.
Um, and so right now, I think that has become important. I mean, a lot of wineries are buying vineyards because they want
Hmm.
to manage their own vineyards,
Yeah.
have access to their fruit, and manage the quality of the fruit. And there's some pest concerns and we've had drought. Now we have some
Hmm.
different viruses that are out there. So viticulturist positions are in demand as well. So I think companies are really investing on the vineyard side.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's always going to be sales positions. You're always going to need good salespeople. And I think uh, I always need CFOs. I mean, I always need to have a good pool of CFOs, and those positions come up often. So,
Okay. So I'm going
yeah.
to go to sales real quick because you brought sales up. Okay. So what is wine sales like? Like, it sounds to me like this great, like an amazing job, like selling wine, like seems like the coolest job in the world. But like what do they look for in people? Like, what makes a good wine salesperson?
I think you have to know wine. So that is where you start getting into your W sets and your level three Psalm experience and above.
Yeah.
Um, you also have to be a good listener. I think anyone who's good at sales actually realizes that you can get a lot of cues from someone. If you're listening to what people say, you're going to be able to say, huh, I think they're going to need this for their wine program, not necessarily this wine I'm trying to shove down their throat. So
Okay.
I think listening, I think creativity in sales is always important because
Yeah.
sometimes if you're a little bit more, hey, this could be great for your program. It's not what you're thinking of, but it might be great for the summer selections you have. Sometimes being that partner with your wine buyer is very important. So,
Okay.
yeah,
No, that's good advice. So, all right, so we're getting close to the end here, and it's
yeah,
been awesome. I've learned so much, and I think everybody else has too. So, you and I have talked for about an hour now, almost. Okay,
yeah.
so what position do you think I would fit perfectly in all the ones that we talked about? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not talking about that.
Well, I don't know. You got a great workers' comp background, so
I
yeah,
do. If you know of anything, let
I
me
think
know.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So let's imagine that somebody's listening to this and maybe they've always wanted to be in the wine business and just didn't know where to go, kind of like I was in the past. But like, what would your recommendation be? Like, where do I start? What are some things I can start doing in order to make myself a better candidate for, whatever job I'm looking for?
Right. So I'm going to be a little snarky and say you got to have your resume. You got to
Okay.
have a LinkedIn profile.
LinkedIn.
But
Okay.
you want to be thinking about what floats your boat. I mean, if I put a marketing person into a seller position, they'd probably be unhappy. So, but you probably would love to be in a seller. I would probably love to be in a seller too. I like that physical work.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out where your passions and where your, I guess, talents lie, and how you can apply that to the wine industry. And I think that you need to be. I think sometimes you can take different steps to get in the wine industry.
Hmm.
Sometimes you could be your background outside the wine industry, and you start working in a tasting room because you enjoy that personal interaction with people.
Hmm.
So sometimes people get in that way. A lot of people do get in a harvest position where they start to learn how to do the different aspects of it. And a
Hmm.
lot of times people migrate from harvest to a harvest seller position to a sales position or hospitality. So you get to maybe try out a few different things. So
Hmm.
hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. No, that's very helpful. So, all right. So, Amy, it's been amazing for the last hour ish that we've been talking. I'm fascinated with this aspect of the wine business, amongst other things, but I think it's fascinating. And I really appreciate you joining us and getting on here and talking about it and answering some of my questions and giving us some good resources. So, if there is anyone out there who's been dreaming of working in wine and wants to pursue that, I think you've got a lot of answers to some of your questions tonight. So, if
Yes.
anyone wants to reach out to you and maybe get some help with their resume or maybe get some help on their LinkedIn profile, like what's the
Right.
best?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the best way to reach out to you if they want to talk about jobs in wine?
Yeah. So I recommend going to winetalent.net. It's .net. Someone's sitting on .com from the
Oh
day I
no,
wanted to start Wine Talent. So,
I hate
but
that.
just remember .net. It's worth it to remember. That's the hardest part. So winetalent.net. I do have a blog, or I have articles up there. How to make your resume, how to do your LinkedIn, some of the uh, things you should like avoid, and also hey, I like to say you should have wine somewhere on your resume so we know actually you're trying to get in the wine industry. So
Hmm.
there's some great articles that can help you from day one. I do
Okay.
have my jobs listed on there, so go to
Hmm.
jobs and vineyard managers, viticulturists, I need you.
Okay. Good.
So
Yeah.
and then I would say check that out, and then definitely, if you want to email your resume over to me, that would be a great first start.
All right. Awesome. Well, Amy, it's been awesome. Like I said, thank you very much. I learned a
Yes.
tremendous amount, and this is totally different than what I normally have here on the podcast, but I think it's a big aspect of the whole wine world is finding out, how it works as far as filling all those positions and stuff. So
Yes, and Wesley, so I was so impressed with your questions. So I thought you might think my background was a snore, especially when I had to say like some of the questions you could ask me and the emails we had before.
yeah.
But I'm really impressed. You really had some great ideas, and also definitely looking at it from the aspect of how to get in the wine industry. So I appreciate that.
Well,
So thank
thank you
you.
for your guidance. And
Yes.
I think it's just a general curiosity that I have about a lot of things. And so these are questions that I wanted to know. So
Right, exactly. So I appreciate it. So thank you for inviting me.
you're very welcome. And I appreciate it. And if I ever hear of anybody who says, I want to get in the wine business or I'm looking for a wine job, I know exactly who to go to.
Great. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Amy.
All right. All right.
Have a great
Thanks.
evening. Appreciate it.
Yes. Good
Take
weekend.
care. All right.
Okay.